Congratulations.
Thank you.
I like your green.
Thank you. It's spring-like, yes. For a whole 5 seconds until it disappears.
I'm leaving for 2 weeks on Wednesday, and I want to get together, but I am gonna be gone. I wanted to get together last week, but I can't believe how much writing I've had to do.
Well, that's what happens to take a class.
Well,
But I didn't. Will you give me your email?
I call to order the regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission, Monday, March 10th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Mount Pleasant City Commission recognizes the Anishinaabe, whose ancestral lands the city stands upon today. We acknowledge the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe and recognize that the three bands of Ojibwe, Saginaw, Black River, and Swan Creek comprise the tribe that have resided on this land for over 200 years. Our acknowledgement of the full history of the tribe and our commitment to be good stewards of these ancestral lands is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those ancestors who came before. We give thanks to the generous care with which the Anishinaabe and those members of the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan have given and continue to give to this land in our community. Clerk Bowk, please take the roll.
Commissioner Alsager? Here. Commissioner Bush? Here. Commissioner Perschbacher? Here. Commissioner Rollins?
Here.
Commissioner Zhang?
Here.
Vice Mayor Eke?
Here.
Mayor Wingard?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we will move into proclamations and presentations.
No, we have to do oath of office.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. We are going to administer the oath of office to Commissioner Zhang. Clerk Bowk will administer the oath. Thank you for catching that.
Yeah. It's like, just,
I do solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear or affirm
that I
that I, John Zhang,
will support the constitutions of the United States of America
will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
and the state of
the
Michigan,
state of Michigan,
and the charter of the city of Mount
and the
Pleasant,
charter of the city of Mount Pleasant,
and that will faithfully discharge the duties of this office
and will faithfully discharge the duties of this office
on behalf of all the citizens of the city to the best of my ability.
on behalf of all the citizens
Of the city.
of the city to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Let me just take a moment to say thank you to Commissioner Zhang for stepping up to the position. And now, with that, we'll move into proclamations and presentations. First one is we have the 2024 Community Improvement Awards presentation by Manuela Pawadeco.
All right, it's just gonna take me a minute to put the presentation up. All right, so good evening, commissioners. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Planning Commission to present the winners of the 2024 Community Improvement Awards. This effort has been ongoing since 1979 as a way for the city to acknowledge property owners for their investment in our communities. These projects add value, they bring pride and joy to Mount Pleasant. This year's photographs were taken by students of the Gracia Isabella Technical Education Center, and we are so thankful for Andrea Langley for her continuous leadership at GI Tech in collaboration with the city on this work. So I will start with the commercial category, and I do have some slides that I would like to get projected. The first winner is Broadway Family Dentistry, located at 611 East Broadway. This project was done by Cummins Construction, who worked on the expansion of the neighboring property with an enlargement that more than doubled the amount of square footage and upgraded parking facilities. The existing building also saw a major retrofit with a great accent volume along the building side, demarking the building's main entrance, which I do have to say they needed a variance, so that's a good lesson learned for us. To receive the award tonight, we have the owner, Dr. Katie Neaton. Please join me in congratulating Broadway Family Dentistry and Cummins Construction for the work that they've done with the project. And you can come forward, please. I was that is there for us to do a group picture later. Okay, thank you. So next, I will call David McGuire, the owner of the duplex at 1006 and 1006 Half Bruce. It's a duplex. The duplex was located at this address was damaged by a fire. So you can see here the picture on the right corner. A special use permit was triggered, therefore the reconstruction was approved by the Planning Commission in 2023, and the construction was finalized in 2024. Fitzgerald Construction, Inc. did the work, and thanks to the very flexible yard regulations that we have in our zoning code, just nerding out a little bit, for the 2 units, each one was possible. We have 1,100 square feet, roughly, of living space and a 1-car garage that's accommodated in the middle of the site and allowed for access through the alleyway. And then I guess just please join me in welcoming and congratulating David McGuire and Fitzgerald Construction for the work that they've done with the property. Now I'll announce the last winner. Since this year we had a tie in the residential category, so we have a 3rd winner. The house owned by Deborah Leisure at 701 South Arnold was renovated with new vinyl siding. The construction was approved directly by the building official, Brian Kench, as it is what we call as a right development, something that is a fast-track approval process that we are very proud of here in Mount Pleasant. Deborah and her partner, Bob Horan, who put this work into the project, will also be receiving the award. Please join me in congratulating this couple for such a great renovation project. So just to finish this year's recognition, I would also like to invite the artists behind these great pictures to come forward for a group picture. So please join me in congratulating Amber Waklowski, Brady Edwards, and Taylor Thompson for their structure, Andrew Langley for the graphics art studio at GI Tech. Thank you so much for your involvement in this work. I think it's better if you come to the middle here for the picture. I think so, yeah.
Good front and center. Yeah, it's a little too crowded back there.
Thank you, Manuela, and thank you to all the award winners for the hard work that you put into our community. Let's see. Next item is we will be moving into a presentation by Phil Biscorner on events planning and organizational support.
Good evening. Hope everybody's doing well today. So this discussion essentially is regarding activating the space at Town Center. In your packet, you have a list of all the events we've kind of done over the years. Not only us, but outside organizations as well. There is a list that has begun for 2025 that we have confirmed some of those things. A couple things that I kind of wanted to discuss before we get too far into this. When we're discussing how to activate the space at Town Center, it's important to distinguish between programs and events. A program is a recurring activity like fitness, art workshop, farmer's market, something that happens regularly. An event is essentially a one-time or annual thing, such as a festival or concert. As we consider ways to activate the space, we recognize that all groups want to use it, not all groups want to use it the same way. Some organizers prefer to continue the adjacent roadway, such as the Beer Fest. They want to continue using the space that they've been using the last couple of years. They don't want to move into that space. One of the main reasons why these groups want to continue using that space is because they want to use the parking lot for parking. So they don't want to move in there and then have 80 whatever less spots to be able to park in. But then you have some of the groups that want to use just the green space, like Market for the Arts. They want to use Main Street and then the green space and still use the parking lot for parking. And then you have other groups like the home builders for the car show that want to use the entire parking lot and Main Street, so they're going to spill onto those things. So we're going to see a unique way, event to event, to be able to utilize the space, but not necessarily all of it the way we built it out. Obviously, we're going to get into this a little further, but staffing still remains a challenge. And one of the reasons why that I just kind of wanted to point out, we do have one special events person, but that special events person all throughout the summer from May to June, or May through October, is doing farmers markets and doing that twice a week the whole entire year. So to address some of these challenges, we've been looking at several different options. One of those things is just relocating some of our events, which you can kind of see in our event thing. So we have talked about moving Movies for Moonlight to that space, which will help us out in a lot of ways too, just because it's a better space for that group. You don't have the hill, so we don't have to worry about kids falling down the hill. We have hookups for the food trucks, so there's not as loud. And obviously the restrooms are right there too. So we can set that up in different ways, and we can also theme it differently too. And so we're working on different ways we can do that. Like for instance, one of the things we're talking about is having one of the movies be like a date night, and hopefully be able to partner with some of the businesses, restaurants downtown, and you go pick up your dinner, bring it, watch the movie, or eat, come watch the movie. So there's a couple different things that we're working on in that aspect of it. We're also looking at reframing how we're doing our program, which used to be Thrilling Thursdays, turn it into Beat the Heat. We're going to change that to be individual programs. And the main reason for that is what we've had in the past is, one, it used to be on Thursdays and we just had too much going on a Thursday, so we moved it to Wednesdays. Now what we're having is people don't want them every week, and they also don't want them the same day of the week every week. So, if they got practice like Little League or, softball or something like that, they're every Wednesday, they can't attend any of them. So we're trying to reframe those so that we can just move them whatever day makes sense throughout the week. And by doing that, we will also be able to utilize that space a little bit differently. And another way we're looking at activating the space is reaching out to a couple different organizations to do yoga and different things, so that we'll have some people utilizing the green space throughout the season. So that is the quick portion of what I got right now. I'll turn it over to Aaron.
I just have a brief presentation that I wanted to cover. I had a conversation with the mayor and the vice mayor at our agenda meeting here. And after having the conversation with them, it was recommended that perhaps I bring this up to the rest of the city commission. And that is how we're going to meet some of our desires as we've talked about events and expanding events, getting into larger scale events, those kind of things. Now, typically I would work with the staff to try to deliver whatever the directive of the city commission is, but in this recommendation, it does veer differently in the methodology of delivery from the past 20 years. And so I'll get into that in my slides here. But ultimately, we've talked about the current state of events, and I think Director Biscorner has teed this up very well for us. We have a single full-time individual that is dedicated to events in the farmers market. There is some support that is offered by different individuals within the recreation department. But really, if we want to add any kind of capacity here, we're going to have to do things differently. We've talked about our desired future state. That would be increased involvement with future events, working with stakeholders on large-scale events, and increasing the usage of our town center space. Possible solutions, as Director Biscorner had said, we looked at a number of different things. One which is just trying to say, let's do more with what we've got here. We determined that that's not going to be capable on our end. We really just cannot add to the plate of recreation staff at this time. We looked at the concept of contracting as well too. A few different things on that end. One, it's somewhat difficult to find contractors. You can find contractors for very specific things, but that would also limit our flexibility in doing different style of events. And then other issues with contracting as well too is that they tend to come with a very large price tag for a very large event. Lastly, we looked at increasing current capacity, which is what we want to do, and this is what I want to talk about with the City Commission, but obviously that requires funding. My proposed funding proposal is this. We would reallocate the funding from the Downtown Development Director position into the Recreation Department and create a full-time employee there that is going to be focused on events and activities. When we had talked about events and activities, the Downtown Development Director position, when it was initially started roughly 20 years ago, was very focused on events within the downtown space. The directive there had changed over a period of time, but as we have started to talk about more interest in events, we think that it makes sense to allocate those resources now back into the Recreation Department directly. Justification for this? There's a significant number of tasks as we had looked at internally and that we have through contract that are duplication and overlap. So our initial position with the Economic Development Director, Downtown Development Director, as well as our contract with Mid-Michigan Development Corporation, all has overlapping tasks. So we looked at that and said we could still identify and still engage in our economic development activities and piece out the events portion and dedicate more to the events side. And so that would be through reassignment of various tasks to various departments. And as we go through those various departments, you'll find too, and I'll point that out, that a number of the different tasks related to creating a desirable downtown really fell in a number of different departments anyway. And so we'll get into those specifics. And then also with this justification, I want to note that it is for the most part budget neutral, that we would be taking allocation from one part of the general fund and then allocating it into the Recreation Department. And that is how we are going to meet our desired future state: increased involvement in future events, working with stakeholders on large-scale events, and increasing the usage of our town center space. Now, I want to pause on this slide and underline that we continue to maintain our commitment to building a desirable downtown, and this is exactly how we're going to do this. On these two slides, I have listed out the major activities that take place that lead to a desirable downtown. One is the annual operation of our budget and capital improvements. On the back end, and most folks didn't know this, the engineering department as well as the Parks and Recreation Department were involved in those activities anyway, in coming up and identifying projects, coming up with estimates, and planning that out into the capital improvements plan. They will still continue to do that, and will still continue to invest in our downtown in that way. Economic development reporting will fall to Mid-Michigan Development Corporation. They would take on the major tasks related to economic development, and they will provide annual reporting to the city on those tasks. And when I say annual reporting, that would come before the City Commission. I would still be in direct contact with Mid-Michigan Development Corporation and managing that contract. The liaison to various boards and committees would be served by the city manager in the interim as we start to identify potential future opportunities for other staff to get involved with those boards and committees. Business development and retention primarily has been the job of a Mid-Michigan Development Corporation. So for instance, when we have retention calls with businesses, typically it was MMDC who was initiating those calls and scheduling those calls, and city staff would just join in on those conversations. So MMDC will continue to take the lead and report back to us on any kind of needs or any themes or information that need to be relayed to the city from those contacts. Grants management would then be handled by our grant coordinator, and this would be two ways. This would be grants applied for at the state level, in which maybe we determine something like a state grant to do a number of different facades in the downtown, or maybe we want to redo a parking lot, or maybe we want to do something along the lines of a town center project. Our grant coordinator will continue that. But also any sort of in-house incentive programs, such as those that we've discussed, that being our fire suppression grant program and our facade grant program, if those are financed in the future, and if the city commission wishes to continue in those activities, we'd utilize our grant coordinator to manage those as well too, since that's well within their wheelhouse. All marketing and branding would be handled by our communications department. Our downtown services and environmental services, this is any kind of cleanup or any special attention to the environment of our downtown. It's our parks department that typically does those things. While I know folks had become used to contacting the downtown development director, and then typically what would happen is that phone call would then find its way to the parks department. It would end up on their schedule and they would move forward with whatever the service call was. In this future state, we would have the individual just directly contact the parks department. And then events and attractions, as we've been talking about, this is a significant focus of our conversation tonight. The recreation department will handle that. That would be events that would be dedicated to the downtown to bring people to the downtown, and then with the built-in market, businesses can capitalize on that, those individuals in the downtown ideally. All of that said, I wanted to open up to questions or discussion. Any questions for me or Director Biscorner?
Commissioner Bush?
I want to remind myself, we did the recreation needs assessment sometime in the last year, right? And so, I mean, as I know some of the things that came up in the assessment were, you know, not attainable at the moment, but do you feel like this direction addresses some of the data that was collected in the recreation needs assessment?
Definitely. I think that if we go this direction, I think it will not only help us be able to program and have more special events, but it will also give us the opportunity for additional outreach, looking for sponsorships, and the outreach being even to CMU for classes and kids to come and help us with our stuff. You know what I mean? So I think it opens up a lot more doors and a lot more time for that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities in a new position in this department. I would be very interested in looking at the job description at some point. I don't know if any other commissioners would, but.
Commissioner or Vice Mayor Ecker?
Okay, so Commissioner Bush has wandered into part of my question. I wanted to see the job description and also perhaps give us a sense of the type of budget you're looking for, you know, for this particular position, right? Okay, and I'm going to assume that whoever comes into this position will also be able to work with the downtown business, you know, businesses to, you know, bring in, you know, events or.
That's what I'm saying by outreach.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. You know,
I just want to clarify.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I've actually already got a meeting with the chamber tomorrow. We've been talking quite a bit, and we want to try to get something a little bit more formal. But those types of things are what this position would help. Okay. It would free up some of my time.
Yeah. All right. Good. Excellent.
Commissioner Alsager?
Well, I guess we're dovetailing off each other because that leads to what I was going to say. I wonder with time as the new person in the recreation department gets, you know, some time downtown, if, you know, if the workload shifts a bit, if maybe there could be even more of a focus on downtown, perhaps.
Yeah.
Commissioner Zhang?
In your proposal, you're reallocating the funding from the downtown development to the recreation department, and as you indicated, it was budget neutral, but it's clearly a shift in allocation and a shift in priorities. It would seem like some of this discussion ought to take place after we have our goals and objectives to make sure that we're in sync, because at least personally, I think it's real important. I consider myself one of those people who look out for businesses, and I'm not sure that this is doing that. I think it certainly helps if our primary objective is to find some more events to have, but how does that fit into the business, and what do we take from that? What's the cost to the business part of the downtown? And my suggestion would be to make sure that we're in agreement when we set our goals, that we put those in priority relation to each other, so that we don't short one in favor of the other.
Any thoughts?
What do you mean by businesses? Like, what do you mean by shortchanging the businesses, I guess?
Well, I think the primary, we allocated the funding for the downtown development director, whose primary responsibility was for the downtown business part of the downtown. And if I'm understanding this correctly, it's moving to the recreation department so that we can look at events and programs that we can fill up the town center, or that we can have, and I'm not sure that there's a net gain, or if I looked at this presentation, I would say the priority seems to shift from the downtown to activity, to finding activities and putting them on, and there's a benefit to the downtown with that, but I'm not sure that the trade-off is a good one. And that's why my suggestion would be, when the commission decides, not me, but the commission decides what our priority is, then that'll help define if we're making the right move or not.
So I think this does two things, though. So one of the big things that we get feedback from the businesses is that they want more events to be able to drive more businesses downtown. But in the same breath, by doing this, we still have the opportunity, when they're sending their questions and concerns, those will be addressed separately by me. You know what I mean? And so I think that allows me to take that role a little bit better. You know, what we have issues with electrical out front, or sidewalks, or things like that. You know, so I don't think we're losing that. I think we're actually just compartmentalizing it a little differently.
Commissioner Bush?
My apologies if I could. I do want to address the question while it's here as well, too. And something I just want to remind the City Commission, our upcoming goals and objectives session is going to be on setting 2026 goals and objectives. The proposal for you this evening is in consideration of one, in our 2024 goals and objectives. We knew we were not able to deliver on the large-scale event that the City Commission wanted us to do, and there was interest at that discussion to carry this over into 2025. And two, it's coming before you now because if we're going to do that, we do need to start getting in line with hiring this position.
That's kind of what I was going to say, because we had this established in previous goal meetings, and for various reasons, we had to delay it, largely because there wasn't adequate staff to address it. My question would be, so I remember the history of the downtown development coordinator in terms of, it really originally started out being more of a recreation
Special events.
position, like who just did special events, and then over time, those special events got compartmented out, parsed out, dissipated, and then it became rather non-centralized. So if we are just nixing that downtown development position, what were they doing now? Has that been parsed out to other departments so that this new hire can be more focused on what was the downtown development coordinator doing?
I think that was a lot of the discuss, they were meeting with those merchants and
Meeting with the
everything.
merchants, yeah,
And
okay.
so, and I was part of a lot of those meetings anyway, because.
Yeah.
So we say Parks and Recreation, but it's actually Parks, Recreation, and Public Spaces. And that public spaces piece is downtown, essentially,
So is this new position going to also be doing those sorts of things too?
No, the actual maintenance side of things stays on the parks and public spaces side of things. The events side of things will stay in the recreation department.
Okay, so who's doing the latter?
That's me.
Okay.
And that always was me in one way or another. It was just
Okay.
going through Michelle to get to me.
Okay, that's what I wanted to kind of clarify. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel strongly that this is a direction that, the city should go in. I really like the idea of them also being a carrier of these sorts of things, generational knowledge and that sort of thing. Because that's been an issue in the past too.
Vice Mayor Ecker?
I just want to clarify again because of the issue that Commissioner Zhang just raised. I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. We are shifting. It seems to me as if we are consolidating some of these responsibilities. I'm going to use the word consolidating. And so some of the responsibilities will be handled by this new position in addition to the task of handling programs and events for the town center. Am I understanding you correctly?
If I can, I want to make sure that I underline, and it touches on Commissioner Bush's question as well, too, about some of what we've been doing within the downtown development director's role within the past couple of years and where this role differentiates. Over the past couple of years, there was a significant focus on grants, grant opportunities, grant management, town center, the chill grant, those kind of things. So that was the focus of this position. Since we've hired a grant coordinator at this point, obviously all of that work, it now falls on another full-time employee. So that was the concentration there. And like I said, when it comes back to the downtown economic development type support, MMDC was at the table with us during every one of these conversations. And it was always something that I had thought was interesting. When I first came on board, we would have 2 individuals full-time from the city representing the city, but we would also have MMDC representing the city as well, too. 3 people at the table in which you really only need a single individual representing the city at the table in those conversations. So MMDC would continue to represent us on economic development type things, and then any sort of internal programs that we had, as I'd said, the facade grant or the fire suppression grants, if that's refunded in the future, that would go through our grant coordinator as well, leaving the opportunity for us to get more involved in events.
Okay, so I heard something about outreaching to businesses. So that's not going away. We will still continue to work with businesses and bring them into, collaboration with whatever we're doing there.
That is correct.
Okay, you've responded. So I think it would probably address some of maybe your concerns.
Commissioner
I
Zhang?
wasn't here for those discussions, and I wasn't a member of the commission, and so I'll yield to the decisions they were making at the time. When I looked at this, I perceived this to be less assistance for the downtown businesses, and perhaps as you weeded through last time, you felt it was not. This was a good thing. The comments made earlier, it was for this last year, but if we hire a position, I hope it's not going to be to hire a position that's for this year. This is going to be a position that the person can come and work here for some time, and it's more permanent. And so if that's a permanent direction, then you've made that long before I got here.
Okay.
Other questions from the commission? Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Yeah, Phil, just stay right there.
Don't go.
Next item that we have is a presentation by Phil Biscorner on the Island Park POW MIA Memorial.
Okay, so I actually was presented with a pretty cool opportunity from the 2 gentlemen in the audience that are going to come up here and talk in a second. We have a proposal from Rich Young and Doug Pickle about possibly bringing a new memorial to Island Park. It is a POW MIA memorial, and it would be the first of its kind. And then The Parks and Recreation Commission heard this presentation in our last meeting, and it was approved unanimously, and I think you'll hear why after they speak, but I'm going to turn the floor over to them.
Thanks, Phil. So I'm the local commander of the American Legion in Mount Pleasant, just up the hill from here. And Doug here came up with an idea about a year ago, I think, and said, let's do a state memorial to our POW MIAs in Michigan. And it will be the first in the country. And we would like to use Mount Pleasant as that center. So I'm going to let Doug talk.
Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to come and do this. For 20 years, I've been honoring our nation's fallen heroes. This all started quite a few years ago when my good friend Calvin Murphy, Vietnam veteran, we saw a POW wife in Lansing be badly mistreated at the 50th commemoration of the Vietnam War. She sat center of the podium. They never even acknowledged her existence. That made me mad, made Calvin mad. To bring it into perspective, I can help you feel it with two questions. Does anybody know when POWMIA Recognition Day is? Don't feel bad. 99% of America doesn't. September 20th. Does anybody know what these POW families get? Nothing. Nothing. So Calvin spent a lot of time coming to Island Memorial Park to visit the Vietnam Wall because it was a place that he felt comfortable. He felt at home amongst his brothers. It's a beautiful park. Now we're in our third year. This September 20th, we're going to host our third POW MIA ceremony at the park again. It's growing quickly. And it became, why can't we build a memorial for these families here in Michigan to give them a place to go, to be near their loved one. A lot of them are buried in Arlington. Well, we come up with the center of Michigan. It's right here. None of these families will have far to drive. Now, like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years and I've traveled the country and seen monuments all across our great land. There isn't one dedicated to any one state's POWs. None. You see headstones, that's it. What we want to do with this memorial is we want to make it a memorial that, number one, honors all of Michigan residents who may have been taken prisoner of war. And when I say honor them all, from the Revolutionary War all the way to present. We want to honor them. We want to tell their story. Easiest way to do that is life-size bronze statues of them. We plan on putting QR codes on each statue. When you scan that code, you'll bring up that soldier's entire story, pictures of them, where they came from, their hometown they grew up in. And at the end, a little video from each family, thanking you for taking the time to learn their hero's story. We're going to have, the whole concept behind this is to be educational. It's got to be. If we're going to help show these families that Michigan cares, it's got to be educational. You enter through a trellis, you'll exit through a trellis. Each one of these trellises are being built by veterans. The end trellis is being built by a United States Marine, Laszlo Salazar, down in Brighton. And the entrance trellis is actually being built by a combat veteran of the Israeli army, Aaron Ashendorf, out of Muskegon, Michigan. All of them to encompass their experience in the military, but also their feelings towards the POW MIA families. It's a way to educate. So we're going to have an eternal flame. That eternal flame is being cast sculpted by a metal artisan in Detroit, a young Mr. Andrew, a U.S. Army vet. And he's actually talking to a very prolific school in Detroit, a high school, to get the kids involved in building it. The whole thing is educate, educate, educate. So we're going to go down through the wars with bronze statues, life-size, to tell the stories. And we want to have something extra for the families. So we're actually talking about doing a black brick walkway up to each statue, strictly for the families. This will teach honor and respect. And in the center of it is going to be the wall with every POW MIA's name and the city they came from. And we want to take it a little bit further for the families. Give them something extra. Down low is going to be a granite box of sand that goes along. They'll be able to take that sand and rub it into their loved one's name and turn it gold. Or they can do the pencil like the Vietnam Wall. Either way, this memorial is going to be designed and built to educate people the second they walk into it to the second they walk out of it. And Mount Pleasant, you've got the most beautiful park right there. And in talking with Rich, almost made him cry, I think, I'm not sure, but it's something that needs to be done. It's long overdue. The whole idea of this is going to be a gift from the people of Michigan to the POW families of Michigan. We're not going after any government grants. People are going to know that this is a gift from every resident of this great state. And if it's done right, I do hope and pray that other states start going, what are they doing up there? Let's go look. Come on and take a look. Enjoy the restaurant downtown while you're here. Hey, there's a hotel right here you can stay at too. Come on in. This September, we're actually going to expand our POW ceremony to 2 days. We're going to do it the 19th and the 20th. We're going to have a food truck competition, and we'd like to make it an annual event. We're going to bring food trucks down to the Vietnam Memorial Wall down there in that area for 2 days. And that'll be a fundraiser every year for this wall. We also want to make it a competition, so whoever gets the trophy, they got to come back next year and defend their title. All in a way to educate the public, but also to make sure it stays in the center of Michigan. Rightfully so, because we don't need to inconvenience these families any more than they have been. So with that,
So I guess what we're looking for you guys is to give your blessing with Phil to kind of use that park area down there to develop this memorial for the POWs, MIAs.
oh yeah.
So, sorry. So they're not looking for funding from the city. They're looking for the space. So this kind of all started, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we relocated the other memorials. That's when this discussion kind of came up. And we have significant space along to the right side of the existing memorials. And so there's the property's there. And so there is a account at the community foundation set up too with these, for that purpose as well.
To clarify, are we looking for an action this evening, with this being in the presentation section?
Basically, we're just looking for guidance that we're on the right track. So that's kind of, we can move forward. Yeah, just keep moving in this direction.
Yeah. If the city engineers would like to get involved, we would love it. We'd like to have Central Michigan University involved. These kids could learn something from this. So if we could do that, that's a win-win for not only Central Michigan University, but Mount Pleasant in general.
Vice Mayor Eke.
I want to begin by saying thank you to you for this presentation and for this idea. It's a very, very difficult subject. It's a very painful subject. I do think that it is important that we remember, and memorials do that. There are places of memory. It's important that we don't lose sight of history, that we don't forget the past. And as such, I really do like the idea of having a memorial that emphasizes education and the implications of war, right? What happens to all of us as a result of war? And that the loss is not just, it's not an individual loss, but it's a loss that we all experience. And so I appreciate the fact that you talk about the group, the community, the state, the people. I appreciate the fact that you do not limit it to just 1 or 2 wars, but that you extend into the past. And I appreciate the fact that you emphasize the need to educate students, people like me also. First of all, I am a survivor of genocide, and so I understand what you're talking about. And it's a genocide that has no memorial for it anywhere. So I understand what you're talking about and why this, for me, is very close. So I appreciate what you're trying to do and what you're going to do, and that you actually have thought in terms of the location, the centrality of this place. Forget the business part, that's important, but it's just the historical and the personal pieces, and the idea that it is important to honor people who have sacrificed enormously, for the nation, for the community, for all of us. So you will have my support. I don't know about my colleagues, but you do have my support, so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. And it's, any other questions?
Commissioner Bush.
Thank you. I grew up next to, right by Washington DC, so I know how powerful these memorials are, and this seems really, really ambitious. And I'm honored that you're looking at Mount Pleasant. I think I'm going to kind of follow up on something I think Vice Mayor Eke was getting at, and that was so forgive me for my ignorance, but the completeness of the records. It seems like this would be something that there would always be a risk of missing somebody, of missing a name, because I know this has happened with most memorials, and I just be concerned about what with it being one figure per person. Is this what I'm understanding? So is there how confident are we that we've got an inclusive, and I mean maybe accounting for soldiers who may not have been documented or may not have had families, might have been in prison, might have been themselves indentured soldiers and that sort of thing?
Glad you asked that, because we're actually having people from across the state contact me who specialize in genealogy.
Okay.
Especially for military. All of them so far have been veterans. In fact, we've tracked the 126th Regiment from Michigan in its earliest days in the Civil War, has almost 3,000 soldiers buried in Georgia.
Right.
That were listed as prisoner of war.
Right.
Now they're going through, taking the painstaking time to go through that and see which ones are actually from Michigan. Because sometimes right on the border, they just say, okay, well, the nearest unit is Michigan, so that's where you signed up. It's defining that. And we'll get to it. It's never gonna be a perfect, let's face it, we're human. God didn't make any of us perfect. So those errors, they will be there, but we're gonna try and keep it as clean and concise through all the proper documentation. Because all that documentation will be right there for everybody to see.
I guess my concern would be, what if we find, like, how many figures are we talking? Like, could we get up to like 100? Because I think that changes,
We're talking hundreds.
so hundreds of life-size
Bronze
statues?
statues, all
Okay,
with the story.
I'm uncomfortable with the sheer number of that. I would need to see like an aerial photo, I think, to understand what area that would encompass. I love the idea.
Yeah.
I am concerned about the execution on the scale that,
Yep, seeing it starts small, because people are starting to catch on to this already. And so it's gonna start small. When you walk through the entrance trellis, you're gonna be in the Revolutionary War. We maybe have 2 right now from the Revolutionary War.
right.
So it will start small, but that pathway through it, we figured right now at about 105 yards long. And that's including all the wars.
But you're talking about hundreds of statues.
Statues, yes. In order to tell that story
Right.
properly and have the right impact. You've been to some of the memorials in DC, the Korean War Memorial.
How many statues is that at the Korean Memorial?
Oh, it's about 18 statues at the Korean War Memorial, I do believe.
Right.
But it's
right.
the impact those statues have. This is what will make this memorial unlike any other in the country. And if you're going to, if you're gonna make a difference, make the difference. And this is something for Kelvin's legacy, for a man that he served with, Arthur Wright. This man right here is still missing in action to this day. His wife, Yuva, before she passed, Kelvin went down and visited her. And she thanked him for everything that we've been doing for her and keeping Art's name out. But as Yuva said, nobody cares. I'm tired of that. If that doesn't make you a little bit angry inside, wow.
No, it's devastating, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I'm just having trouble wrapping my brain around hundreds of statues because, yeah, there's 19 at the Korean War, and that's already a devastatingly powerful
Yes.
memorial, and that's at our nation's capital. I'm just concerned that if we have all of a sudden, I am all for this. I really don't want to sound like I'm not, but
Right.
like more than, am I alone here in this? This feels like.
It sounds like it's a concern about changing the nature of the park.
Yeah, I just feel like, there are, how many people are in this room right now, right? There's 25 people in this room? Can you imagine 4 times that of statues standing in a space in the park? I'm just concerned that, I don't know, it seems like it's
Well,
gonna,
Imagine, if you will, that space is spanned out over a football field or a football field and a half.
that's why I said I'm a very
That-
visual person, and I appreciate the view that you gave us, but I think what I need to do is I need to look at like an aerial photo type view. I love the idea. I am having trouble buying on to the conceptualization of the art. Because I really, really love the idea because
Yeah.
I think we have a fantastic already, like, we have our own little mini Capitol Mall because we have so many great memorials. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And I started counting the figures and I was like, okay, 25, that doesn't seem like very many, maybe 20, but I find it like it's going to be difficult for me, I think. Like I said, I just feel like it's just, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Is it 100 yards long by how wide? What's the scope of the
That would
area?
depend on the engineering down there next to the river,
Okay.
because there are
Right,
there
because,
are setbacks we have to be aware of, and that's the
right,
other
the
thing.
environmental impact.
We
and
got to be
everything.
very cognizant
But
of building next to the river.
If it's 100 statutes within 100 yards, it's
Not
not
that many.
crowded at all.
No,
So that's
Because
one
if you
about,
look at a football field,
Right.
and you look at all the people on the sidelines and the players on the field,
yeah,
that should give you some scope as to how the 100 statues would be distributed
Yeah.
among that 100
you said 100 yards? Okay, so
Yeah.
like one, well, but he says it could be hundreds.
could be.
Yeah,
yes.
but
So then
even if he
that's,
starts off with 100, it's still,
okay, I can
there's
see,
still adequate space for scaling up appropriately.
okay, I mean, yeah, you were talking about then you would like maybe stagger behind.
Right, I mean, you could be,
Yeah.
okay,
All right,
I mean,
that- see,
there's
this is
different
helping.
configurations.
This is helping, so it's along a path.
And not for nothing, I
Yeah.
mean, we've got several steps to go through to get there.
Okay,
And so we'll be bringing stuff back as, you know, it'll be years
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
okay,
I mean,
okay.
it's-
I
you know,
just want to
this-
make sure it's attainable,
Yeah.
because if we find out that we have 1,000 POWs,
Right.
a 1,000 statues, see, then we're starting getting to this, I feel like that actually dilutes the power.
Right.
That would, see, in that case, if it got
Yeah.
to that point, we would take the most notable. Right now, one notable that we're gonna have is Edward Wentworth, who's from Mount
Oh,
Pleasant.
yeah, sure, right, yeah.
Mount Pleasant.
That guy,
Yeah.
he only served 7 days, was thrown off of a cliff with a bunch of others for dead. Nobody's telling that story.
Yeah, no, I definitely, and I love the fact that you're bringing in ideas for engagement with like other communities. Again, I just, like, I needed to,
Right.
Yeah.
well, you want to know the truth too, if I can be real with you for a second? One of my dogs, you know, the statue of the man cradling, okay, one of my dogs always barks at that. And he's gonna see those statues and he's gonna bark.
That's fine. That's fine.
Commissioner Zhang, I
Because-
believe you had some comments.
Rich and Doug, thank you for your service. My questions, though, are going to be about the city's responsibility. What's the total cost of this thing's going to be?
We don't know yet.
It's
Ballpark?
ballpark, I would say about between 10 and 15 million.
And how long will it take to fundraise that much money?
Well, if we can raise $2.5 million a year inside of 5 years, we could probably have the park about 85% complete.
Wow.
What, do you expect any infrastructure from the city?
None.
Who will pay for the insurance on this thing?
Through our fundraising efforts, we're going to make sure that that is continually run, because this is actually going to be a living
Just like
memorial. Unfortunately, we're human beings. We're always going to be at war with somebody. It's always going to be somebody sooner or later to add another statue to it. We want to set this up so that funding continually goes into this. So even if it's, they need a lawnmower for the park down there, we will have the funds to make sure that they have the equipment to take care of the park.
It will be a similar setup to what we have currently with the Vietnam Memorial.
Yep.
And
So they have cameras and security and stuff too, so.
and the gas bill is paid for by this fundraising?
If we can't get it donated, we'll find a way to fund it. And it won't be, no government, and we won't ask nothing from you other than post it.
Could I ask the city clerk to read from the city charter, section 16, E and F?
Why?
If you have that in front of you, I. City charter, let's see, let's see. Yeah, so the charter, what was, section 16?
E and
Yep,
F.
E and F. The commission, so section E, the commission shall not have the power to sell, divide, lease, partition, plat, subdivide, or dispose of any city park or any part thereof unless specifically approved by a majority of the electors voting thereon at any general or special election. Section F, the commission shall not have the power to sell, divide, lease, partition, plat, subdivide, or dispose of any city-owned interest in real property which lies within 100 feet of the edge of the Chippewa River or its tributaries, as they may exist in their natural state, unless specifically approved by a majority of the electors voting thereon at any general or special election. This subsection shall not apply to the normal operation of a cemetery. So I suppose with that information in mind, the question would be ownership, I imagine would be a question there of like, who would retain ownership of this?
We would still own it.
Yeah, we would still own it.
Yep,
Yeah, you're not transferring anything.
you're not transferring anything, that, it would be owned by the city.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Ake.
You beat me to my question. Well, it wasn't really my question. I wanted to clarify that we're not leasing the space. You're just simply asking us for, permission to have this memorial
Yes.
located here.
Yes.
Okay, so you preempted my my thoughts. But I'm also assuming that I want to make sure that I heard you clearly, that you said some foundation or some account has already been established.
Yes.
For
Through the
donation.
Yep, the
You-
Mount Pleasant Area Community Foundation.
Okay, I thought I heard that. I also heard you say that you are not going to ask the government or the city for any funding. So
No.
I'm just really trying to make sure that I'm hearing clearly,
Yep.
right?
You heard that right, and by
Okay.
doing that, we intend to keep this a true gift from the people of Michigan to the POW families of Michigan.
So in other words, whatever fund is set up for this particular memorial, I'm going to assume that money from that fund, I'm jet lagged. I just came back from, a conference on indigenous genocide and,
Oh, yeah.
overseas, so I'm jet lagged. So, but I'm also assuming that whatever fund is set up will then be used to address some of the concerns in terms of, caretaking and all of that.
Maintenance, landscaping.
Okay.
Care, all of that,
Oh,
yes.
so this memorial
Yes.
will be self-sustainable.
This
Yes.
will be a self-sustainable, it will be, for lack of better words, habitat friendly, being next to the river and in the flood zone. This is why we're going everything bronze, so that way it won't damage.
Okay, so all of this hopefully will be worked out, written out as some kind of document or memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreement, however
Yep.
you want to call it, so that we have some documentation. That way, if I'm not here and you're not here, you've got this document that says this is what we agreed
Yep.
to. All right, I'm okay then.
The biggest intent with this is to keep everything transparent.
Transparent, yes, thank you.
Everything.
Thank you.
So,
So kind of right now, the Vietnam Memorial is the Michigan Vietnam Memorial.
Right.
And it operates the same way that we're looking to operate. It kind of self-sustains itself. We get a group of people and go down and landscape and take care of everything and clean up and do all that.
Even
There's no
plantings and things
cost.
like that.
There's no cost. I think you guys mow around it.
Yeah,
Just because you're
yeah,
mowing
that's
it
the grass,
down there.
yeah.
But that's about it.
Commissioner Zhang, I believe you had a
I
final
just want to
thought.
make sure we understand, it's not just who owns it. There was other qualifiers in there, and we need to make sure that we comply. The commission does not have the power to make a decision on this parkland.
Gotcha. So,
I'll look into it.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from everyone, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation this evening. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
What I'm generally hearing from is that there's interest in like a final design and then also examining the legalities of working with that particular space there would be, yeah. And so there would be a combination of factors that would go along with it. But interest it seems to be there from the commission. Let's see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. All right. Okay, we are going to move right along. We're going to move, at this time, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, we're going to move on to public input on agenda items. If you are in the audience and would like to speak on any of the agenda items listed, please come forward to the mic. You'll have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
My name is Andy Brockman. I live on Joseph Drive. I'm here today to be in support of mine and Ken Strom and Tidra Mac's proposal from October for fire suppression and facade improvement. First, I want to thank everyone for putting it on the agenda. I know I communicated with the commission. There was the meeting 2 weeks ago about the Tifa district. And so we're very appreciative to finally get an answer. We've been anxiously waiting to hear a response from the city commission. In reviewing the previous, the October, November submission, it appeared that the proposal itself had support from the city administration, which we were appreciative of. And in reviewing the packet today, it appears the submission from October 31st has remained consistent. My read through it seems that the administration and the city still supports the fire suppression and facade improvement. So there's obviously, from the people requesting it, there's an obvious benefit to having the city grant the proposal, but I do think it's important to point out that there's a downtown benefit and more of a community benefit when the buildings downtown receive funding from the city for facade improvement or fire suppression. They immediately start to revitalize the downtown area. It improves the property value. The project that we're talking about has taken a building that the living spaces were not great, and it's the side that Ken's been working on has doubled the amount of occupancy there. The aim is to have young professionals there, which will then in turn help other businesses downtown. Those young professionals will, go to restaurants, go to the library, and hopefully just be a part of the community down there. I think this is a total positive for the downtown, and it seems like the type of idea that the city commission should be supporting. We have an investor that's come in from downstate. He has connections to the community, and it seems like an obvious choice for me to grant. I know earlier in the previous meeting, there was some discussion about the Tifa district. And there's probably some people that say, well, why don't you wait till you have Tifa funding through tax revenue? The issue that I spoke on last time was that if we wait for Tifa revenue, the job is going to be completed already. And the city has a sound policy of not funding projects that are already done, which makes total sense. In this situation, like we said, we asked in November. It was either October or November, I can't remember. And we've been waiting, and now it seems like there is some intention to move forward with funding the Tifa district. We're not exactly sure what, but there seems to be still this outstanding issue of the request that we made. So I would just ask that the city commission grant the request today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience? Yeah, thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Brockman. I live at 1117 Wonder Way. I'm going to read a letter that I sent to a few of the commissioners. As a longtime Mount Pleasant resident and the new owner of 201 South University, I'm writing in strong support of Ken Strom's October 2024 funding request for facade improvement and fire suppression at 120 South University. Ken's vision is unique to Mount Pleasant and forward-thinking for the downtown. Rather than undergraduate student housing, he is creating 4 and eventually 8 upscale living spaces for young professionals who want a home in downtown Mount Pleasant where they can easily walk to restaurants, shops, the public library, and the new green space. The design plan of these apartments is remarkable, open, light-filled, and spacious, with each apartment being completely renovated from studs to ceiling, along with high-quality flooring, granite countertops in the kitchen and bath, and soft-close cabinetry. To date, I'm aware of just a few other upscale living spaces in downtown Mount Pleasant, above the Brass, above Salon Blue, and a new residence above the Janes Backus and Janes Building. Ken's Apartments will be a fine addition to this already existing set of upscale downtown living spaces. The more people living in downtown, the better for the entire historic district. I believe Mount Pleasant is, in fact, lucky that Ken decided to invest in historic downtown Mount Pleasant. He was born and raised in Michigan. He is a CMU alum, along with 2 of his 3 children, and he routinely spends time in Mount Pleasant to see his daughter, a Mount Pleasant High School history teacher, and her family. Rewarding an investor with strong ties to the community is a very appropriate activity for Mount Pleasant town leadership. Moreover, I would, as a taxpayer, be happy to know that my tax dollars were being spent to enhance and enrich downtown Mount Pleasant, making it a better place for everyone. I'd be remiss if I didn't note that I first learned about Ken's project from my son, who is working with him on the renovation. This connection, however, doesn't negate my strong support for the project. As you know, as some of you may know, my late husband and I purchased Max and Emily's at 125 East Broadway in 1994, and we were united in our steadfast and strong commitment to downtown Mount Pleasant. In his absence, in Tim's absence, I am still a steadfast and strong proponent of historic downtown Mount Pleasant, as evidenced by my recent purchase of 201 South University and my continued ownership of 125 East Broadway. My intention is to continue the town-gown connection that Tim and I started over 30 years ago, and I believe that Ken's project is aligned with this long-term goal. As such, I speak for myself when I respectfully request that you grant Ken's proposal for the betterment of downtown and the entire Mount Pleasant community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jessica Carrion. I live on 109 North Arnold Street. I want to talk about the presentation just given about events planning and organizational support, specifically involving where events should be held, whether it's on the street from going forward or whether it's going to be pushed to the parking lot or the green space. I will always be in favor to shut down the street over a parking lot, but that being said, I'm not fully against using that green space in the parking lot. I think the city has a lot more to do in order to win my approval at the very least. For instance, I think one of the big reasons the street is a much better place for a lot of these events is just simply how easy it is to concentrate the event. You can limit the amount of street you're giving to these events, which makes the appropriate size, like the Craft Beer Fest. I think the organizers of that event are very, very good at minimizing the space and concentrating their event to where it feels lively. Whereas there have been other events, like I would say, Paint the Street with the Art Reach, and that's coming from someone who volunteers strictly with the Art Reach. That event doesn't look as lively as something like the Craft Beer Fest. And it comes down to that concentration, I'm sorry. And I feel like there's no standardization to how you guys are limiting this parking lot for an event. Is there any way to create standardizations to only maybe cut out half of the parking to, again, concentrate that event, make it look lively for the section that it is? Because, and again, I'll throw the Art Reach out again. With Freak Fest last year, they were the first event to utilize that parking spot, and it just felt so small because of they were trying to utilize such a large space for what I think was an event that should have been much more concentrated. And another thing I think the city needs to invest in strongly is signage, large signage that very clearly states when that parking lot is closed, where they should park elsewhere. It shouldn't be up to the event holders to point fingers and actually tell these people where to park. Hey, go down to City Hall, there's parking there. Like, sure, we can do that, but is that really something that the city can just fix with signage? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening.
This one is probably for Mr. Zane more than it is for anybody else because you weren't here last time. I am Ken Strom. I'm from downstate in Commerce Township. And just real quick, the thing that I want to just bring to everybody's attention is, and I've said it before, and I just want to remind everybody of it again. When I bought the building, I was promised two things, that if I invested more than $75,000, I would get an additional liquor license. I don't need another liquor license. We got two of them for the building. I don't need a third. I just don't. But they did tell me that I was going to get a suppression system I was going to get assistance with the suppression system, and I was going to get assistance for the facade. I went ahead and began my project. Being perfectly frank with you, and I'd just be straight up with you, I was going to do this building whether you guys were going to help me or not. That's it. I mean, I was going to do it. But to find out that I was going to be offered the opportunity to be able to be reimbursed a small portion of that back to me, I mean, it's $43,500. It is a lot of money, but it's not nearly as much as I put into the building, not even close. But I think that is the first thing that I want to bring up. And more than that, please remember that we already own businesses down here. We have already paid taxes. Before you make a decision that you want to try to drum up additional people coming into the town and building new buildings, help us first. Okay, but we want to make our buildings cool. And with a little bit of help from you guys, we can do that. But I think that trying to increase and to get new business is a great idea. Again, I have the same situation down in Farmington. I own a building right on the corner in Old Town Farmington. They offer us $25 or 25% on the dollar for whatever we invest in our facades. So downstate, if you go down and take a look at what Farmington looked like 5 years ago and what it looks like now, it isn't even close. There's so much money that was poured into fascias, fronts. I'm about to put another about $250,000 into my building down there because the guy across the street put $5 million into his. Now, I can't have somebody across the street having a better building than mine. So we got to put some money in there. And as much as I understand that it is not something that you want to do, no, help us first. Help us first. And after that, then the money that's allowed or the money that's available, then bring in the new business. And I'll tell you what, this may not be and probably won't be the only business or the only building that I buy down there. There's a few other ones that are down there that are available. And to be quite honest with you, unless my wife has something else to say about it, I'm probably going to get another one. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to give public comments on agenda items? Is there anyone on Zoom? Any emails? All right. At this time, I'm going to close public input on agenda items. And I actually have a query for Clerk Bauk. I needed a motion to approve the agenda as presented under additions and deletions. I think given the amount of material we've covered already, that kind of distracted from that motion there. Is it okay if I just move to that motion at this time? Thank you. At this time, then, I would like to request a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. See. At this time, we will move on to receipt of petitions and communications. Manager Dissents.
Receipt of petitions and communications includes the monthly report on police-related citizen complaints received, minutes of the Planning Commission from December 2024 and January 2025, minutes of the Traffic Control Committee from December 2024, and the 2024 Planning Commission Annual Report.
Thank you. With that, we are going to move on to consent items. Manager Dissents.
Consent items this evening includes approval of the minutes from the regular meeting held February 24, 2025, approval of the minutes from the closed session held February 24, 2025, received city requests for Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe 2% allocations, approval of an advance commitment of 500 tons of road salt through the M-Ideal program, approval of the purchase of 3 Chevrolet Police Package Tahoes from Berger Chevrolet, award contract for 2025 well rehabilitation project, wells 17 and 20, and approved budget amendment, and approval of payrolls and warrants.
Thank you. Are there any items that commissioners would like taken out of the consent agenda, consent items? Let's see. Question I had, could you remind us for the receipt of 2% allocation grants when you needed responses by for the commission?
Absolutely. So we will be asking each city commissioner to rank their top 5 projects. We will get that ranking from each of you at our next meeting on March 24th.
Thank you. Let's see. Any additional discussion? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I have just one question.
thank you.
This is for Director Loria. One of the vehicles that is being proposed that we allow to have purchased is supposedly going to be used sometimes for the response unit. I'm not saying the correct terms.
Are you saying that one of them is going to be exclusively used by the youth services unit? The 2 others are going to be used as road patrol vehicles.
Okay,
We're moving one out, an older one out, that'll be used by the public information officer. It's already being used by the public information officer.
okay, and here's my question. Are there any driving regulations for who can drive youth?
I need a little more. Like, are you asking if our officer can put youth in the car and take them, with parent permission, under those circumstances where they need a ride, or there was an incident of, I'll just leave it under parent permission.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like there were some tours involved. Visits.
Yes. The one thing, it gives the opportunity to be discreet. I mean, people recognize what the vehicle is. You're not going to totally eliminate that. But they're transporting students, I would say on a frequent basis for a variety of reasons. And so that's what it would be used for, but in part.
And so there's a permission process.
Yeah, we're not taking any student for a ride without.
Okay.
No.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Is there any other discussion on any of the consent items or questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
All those in favor, or is there a second? We need a
Second.
motion to,
I think we already did that.
Didn't we already do that?
No? I'll second it.
thank you. Yeah, no, we
approved the agenda.
we approved the agenda.
Yeah.
With the time change, it's a wild time right now, everybody. All those in favor of the consent items, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. We only have one more item. We don't have any public hearings. We only have one more item on the agenda. I'd like to move just right into it to keep moving, if that's all right with the commission. That would take us into new business, the request for fire suppression and facade improvement funding allocation for Tydra Mac LLC, 120 South University, and no longer a request for work session. Let's see, and request for work session. It's on the agenda. Manager DeSense?
My apologies about request for work session, because that should have been cut off in the final version. There is no request for work session
can
here.
just decline it,
We're
yeah.
only requesting the city commission give final consideration to this. So the owner at 120 South University submitted a request for a fire suppression grant, facade improvement grant in Q4 of 2024. Funding for both programs was exhausted in Q2 of 2024. The city commission had requested information related to the total funding of the program through 2024 and the timing in which the city commission was provided the request. The city manager's report in your packet provides information about funding through 2024, and additional information was provided in an email that was sent out today, and a copy of which has been placed at the dais at each of your seats. Funding for the program, as I had mentioned, was exhausted in Q2 of 2024, and a communication was sent to our contact list of downtown businesses and property owners on June 3rd. The owners of the 120 South University project discussed the possibility of applying for a grant with the state of Michigan with staff. Staff informed them in October that funds had been exhausted in those two programs, but special consideration could be provided by the City Commission. That request from the applicant was provided to the City Commission at the November 11th meeting as a special request outside of the previous fire suppression and fire improvement grant programs. The City Commission this evening is being asked to consider a one-time allocation of funding for 120 South University. The total request is $42,500. At the time of application, the owner had indicated they had committed $350,000 to the development. That seems to perhaps have maybe changed based on some of what the City Commission had heard here this evening. Funds are available, I will say, in the general fund in unassigned fund balance.
Yeah, so talking on this item a bit, also to help tee up a conversation, at our November 11th meeting of 2024, when we initially heard this, the motion was to postpone, looking for having a work session on the topic, and then this has been brought forward again. An official decision can't be made during a work session, so we're making an official decision tonight. So my request to the commission is looking for either approval or a decline of the funding of this funding request. But also, along with that motion, I just want to have a bit of conversation about why we make the decision that we make. Specifically, it's a request for funding that doesn't have a standardized funding mechanism along with it, is the big thing there. This is separate from grant funding or any other, programs that we currently offer, and now we can offer in the future. And we will be discussing that at a later date, along with the TIFA and any other discussions. But currently, actively, we don't have a mechanism to fund this other than we have interest in the project. So I want to just make sure as we're talking about this, and because there are other businesses out there that have interest in funding. There's other local residents who could use funds of any amount that we discuss. If we decide to fund this, we're discussing why that is, and we're making sure we're taking consideration of that. The biggest hesitation I have is in the interim, before we have additional mechanisms put in place, the hesitation I have is suddenly getting a slew of requests for funds, because we do have money and we could give out money and then we would eventually run out of those funds. So again, I'm looking for discussion on reasoning behind thought process here. And so I'd put to the rest of the commission, whoever might have thoughts. Commissioner, Vice Mayor Akai.
Okay. My understanding is that the request came in after we had expended, the money in the funding grant or, mechanism. I'm going to use your word mechanism.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm just going to ask these questions just to clarify things. And at which point the applicant was told that there might be a possibility of special consideration.
That's correct.
Okay, well, so we did say there might be possibility of special consideration. Because, so for me, that is, where, that's part of the problem, because you said there might be possibility of special consideration. The applicant went forward to submit this application. That's what my understanding.
Technically, we don't have an application on file. We have the request before the City Commission that was in form of the memo that was provided to you from the November 11th meeting from the former Downtown Development Director.
So, okay. So, here is my thought on this. If there hadn't been an indication that there might be the possibility of the commission making special consideration, if I were this, applicant, I probably wouldn't go forward because there's no promise. There's a hint that there is that possibility. And so you have a situation where the potential or the possibility for this consideration has encouraged the application of, the funding.
The request.
Yeah. So I do think that, apart from that, the fact that, the project contributes to the enhancement of, the downtown, and that the manager, you've indicated that there is money, in our budget, in special, general grant that has not been allocated.
Correct. We do have funding that is unassigned in the general fund that could be allocated towards this. Yeah, I just want to make sure that the city commission is aware, because the paperwork that's at your seat here has the direct communication that was sent to the owner, where it says there underneath the city section, it says facade and fire suppression incentives currently have no available funds, but depending on the project, we could request support from the city commission. We would handle this similarly to the 200 East Broadway project, incorporating it into our RAP or CRP application. So I just want to make sure that was the exact communication that was provided.
Yeah, and sorry for the paraphrase if I paraphrased it incorrectly, but that's what I'm seeing here. So I think, for me, there's a this creates a conundrum in a way, okay? Because we've got requests for this funding, with the assumption that yes, we could request some money, and do we have enough unallocated funds in the general fund to cover this?
Yes.
Okay, that's where I'm going with this. All right, and this is a one-time, request. It doesn't mean that we are going to start giving awards, if for any reason we say yes now. We're not saying we're opening up the floodgate or the portal for more requests. This is just the exception. I'm looking at this as an exception.
If the city commission worded the allocation of those funds in that way, I would be very particular about, as Mayor Wingard had stated, if the city commission goes that route, the particulars as to why this would be the exemption, so as to not open the city to any potential trend setting or anything like that.
That would be my position. Okay, I just want to make clear, that is that would be my position. This is an exception because.
So you would like to see in a motion, like the reference to a decision-making factor within that motion?
Yes, so that we don't open up the floodgate for additional, one, because the letter did suggest that we could, we could ask for these funds, right? So as such, I would say, this is an exception. It's a one-time thing. We are not going to open it up for other applications. And, until we make a decision about what to do in the future.
Commissioner Alsager.
Well, I would hope that in the next year or 2025, 2026, that we can restart this program.
Yes.
But in the meantime, I'll be supporting this.
Okay.
Commissioner Perschbacher.
On November 11th at the meeting, there was some support to do this, but it was then tabled so that we could create a work session to discuss further funding of some sort. Being that it feels that our revenue that comes in from our cannabis dispensaries, because we have so many, it's increasing. And I would suggest that at some time when we do go into work session, that we discuss some of those funds being part of this, as well as being part of our program to help homeowners. I think anytime that the city invests in businesses and in residents, it's important because it helps bring people in and it helps people feel like they belong here, like this is a place where they're being taken care of. I completely support full-heartedly support giving the $42,500 to this organization, being that they were given that promise. We kicked it down the road for whatever reason in November, and I would really like to see this go forward now.
Commissioner,
I would like to be just very clear too on the history though, because we're going back to the last applicant who applied for 90,000, and so then we exhausted what was left in the grant. Now, was that the one that we then approved a budget amendment to, or was that a different applicant?
I don't recall any sort of a budget amendment that was approved for that particular applicant.
We had a different, there was a different applicant that came before us sometime in the last, sometime in the probably Q3, Q4.
Yeah, if you were talking about, the only other one that I could think of that was related to this was 200 East Broadway had come forward because they were applying for a RAP grant through the state of Michigan. That was a $1 million grant with the state of Michigan, and it required a local match of sorts. And so the city commission had authorized a $90,000 allocation for that project.
Yeah, that's not what I'm referring to, but I guess I won't dwell on that. But, so I just want to be clear that our final applicant, though, did not get the full amount of funding that they requested, though, for their grant.
That is also correct.
So I guess that's where my concern lies. The precedent that this, states, because, I mean, if we just take out the details, and we say, well, the money was gone, so it's a precedent thing to me. I'm just worried because, I mean, what if this person comes back and, I mean, we could be, is this a legal issue? Like, how was the grant worded? Like, I mean, the fact that this isn't even applied for a grant. So I don't understand what's going to stop lots of businesses from approaching us and all of a sudden saying, I want this much, I want that much. Like, I feel like there has to be some standardization. Like, otherwise we're going to really open ourselves up to, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying we've got to, I'm confused to a certain extent why, it was even something that was brought to us. Is this something that is in the practice of something that we do? Because I feel like there has to be some standards associated with a request for funds.
I think most applicants got a percentage of what they spent. And this is the case, that's the case here as well.
But then this last person applied for 90,000, but was only granted 57 to clean out the grant. So that would mean was their true percentage 90,000 then?
Just the percentage of what they spent, they're not getting all of it.
All right,
That doesn't really matter.
Okay, maybe I'm missing something, but if I spent $100,000 and what is it, 10% or something?
I'm not.
Okay, so let's just say it's 10%. If I spend $100,000 and I apply for 10%, but there's only 5,000 left in the grant, I only get $5,000. And is that what happened to the applicant before? They applied for the maximum they thought they were eligible for based on how much they spent, but then there wasn't enough money in the grant?
That is correct. What you
Right,
just
that's
said
my
there.
point.
They had applied for $90,000. They were awarded $57,000. They were short the $33,000 because they had exhausted all the funds of the grant program.
Commissioner Zhang, I believe you had some questions.
Question.
Make sure you're speaking into the mic.
When the Commissioner Bush's comments, the amount that was given, is that, could we correlate that to this particular one, or is 42,000 equivalent to what we've done on the last couple of them?
The $42,500 was the specific grant request from this building owner in this instance.
I'd like to make a motion, it can be discussed, make a motion, we approve the 42,500 as a grant, incumbent on it being a one-time exception, with the understanding that before, there was no other money available until we can establish the criteria to bring future similar requests.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second. And then I believe Commissioner Zhang, you indicated discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Discussion on the motion.
Yeah. Vice Mayor Acker.
I like the motion, but I want to modify the terminal language about bringing further requests. Maybe just make a motion that we grant this until we establish criteria for funding, requests in the future. I just want to modify that.
I was hoping that the motion was saying that we're approving this amount, but it was an exception, and then there's no more money until we create the criteria for future disbursement.
Okay, you
Because-
just said what I was just saying. That's okay, that's it. We're on the same page. Yeah, you just said exactly what I'm saying. Because initially, it was a little bit different from what you were saying. Yes.
I'd be supportive of the motion, especially hearing from the interest of the other commissioners about ensuring that this is a one-time action of establishing future mechanisms for funding. The suggestion of using cannabis funding from cannabis above a certain level is an interesting proposition there that I think we would be able to explore well in our goals and objectives meeting coming up. So appreciate that consideration there. One thing I just want, before we move into a vote, for myself, is just the term special consideration was brought up as far as being discussed with residents and business owners. We want to encourage staff to use best judgment, and we want to encourage, and being able to be a business-friendly environment requires, again, working with staff. But it's also just making sure that we, as the commission, have an understanding of why items are being brought before us, and it's not just because random items come before staff and it's like, well, I can get you that or anything. I think this development fits within our goals and objectives. A cool city, I believe, is one. Manager DeSense works with them far more than I do on a daily basis, so you could probably rattle them off. But again, I'd be supportive of this. Was there any other discussion before we vote on the motion?
I guess I would like to direct staff to have a potential, we need to start looking at what that standards is going to be. And if that's what we want to, if we want to work with the TIFA, we want to use some of the marijuana money, I'm all for that. We have, we could work like, the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe does in terms of 2%, and we could base what we're able to offer for businesses as a percentage perhaps of the marijuana funds. And so that way, if we don't really have a great year, well, it's not really the year that we invest a lot. But if that's something we're going to establish, we need to establish a precedent, and that could be based, maybe that can be something discussed in the goals meeting, in the organizational goals meeting. I do want to just go on record and saying I do have a concern that we are leaving this final applicant in the lurch with this. And I'm just concerned how that looks to us for us as an organization, but I would support it knowing that we were using this as an opportunity to learn from our mistakes and establish something that's a little bit more formal and accountable.
Any other discussion?
I just want to correct something, or maybe address something. I understand that the last applicant applied for 90,000. We didn't have 90,000. We can't just simply go rob a bank to get the balance to give the final applicant. We're talking about an application that came in when the funding has exhausted, and this particular one that we're dealing with right now did not even get a cent. I do think that this, I'm just.
I understand, but that's what we're doing. We're just pulling money,
No. Okay, I don't want to argue about it, but I think that we do need to address this.
I think he was promised, a chance to get the funds, and basically
didn't get it.
I guess I'm confused then why the application wasn't put in earlier.
We need some decorum.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think,
I'm done.
we can discuss, we're discussing the same points frequently. At this point, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Let's see. There are no other items on the new business. At this time, we will move into announcements on city-related issues and new business by the commission. Again, I'm going to call commissioners alphabetically. We'll start with Commissioner Bush. Do you have any announcements on city-related issues and new business?
I can't say that I do, thank you.
Gotcha. Let's see, Commissioner, or Vice Mayor Eke, or going alphabetically, Al Sager. Commissioner Al Sager.
Just a comment that next week we can celebrate the Clare Irish Festival.
Yes, thank you. Gotcha. Vice Mayor Eke.
I don't have anything other than to remind people that it is Women's History Month. And, so 1 month in the year that we remember that women hold up half the sky. Okay, so let's do things, remember that, that's all.
Let's see, Commissioner Perschbacher.
I'd like to remind people as they are looking at cleaning their yards and such. I mean, it's beautiful weather out. I've seen many people raking. I want to remind you that the city does not do leaf pickup in the spring, only in the fall. Please do not rake your leaves into the street. Thank you.
Commissioner Rollins.
I have nothing at this time.
Gotcha. I don't have any announcements myself at this time. I sent out an update email with some items looking for responses from the rest of the commission. That should be in your emails and you can review on your own time. Commissioner Zhang, do you have any announcements or items on city-related issues and new
Just
business?
to thank you for the commission for appointing me. I appreciate your confidence, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move into public comments on agenda and non-agenda items. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on anything on the agenda or not on the agenda, now is your time. Please come to the mic. You'll have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, Joseph Carrion, 109 North Arnold Street. This is just another reminder from last meeting about Google Maps and how it does not have the knowledge yet. I'm checking every day at this point, but I'm not upset or anything, just constant reminder, if this is the wrong place I'm bringing it up, please tell me where I need to bring it. But it is critical for Google Maps. Again, I think a lot of us openly trust Google Maps to give us the best directions when we're in unfamiliar places. And this being a college town, we're always having new residents, new college students every year. And if they just blindly trust Google Maps, they can blindly take Google Maps into dangerous territory. Like right now, if I ask Google Maps to give me directions to Myers, it'll tell me to cross Mission on Palmer where there's no light intersections. And then it'll tell me to cut across through the McDonald's parking lot and cross Pickard also in a non-light intersection. And so I don't think we want that for our town, especially for bicyclists. I don't think any driver deserves to be seen bicyclists crossing in these areas. It's just a terrible thing for everyone involved. So yeah, thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to offer public comment? Is there anyone on Zoom? Are there any emails? All right, at this time, I'm going to close public comments. We have nothing else on the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned at 8:47.
Hey, all right.
Shorter meeting.